Have you ever stood beneath the vast night sky and felt something stir deep within you? That sense of wonder, that quiet voice inside whispering, "What is all of this? Who am I in all of this?" It's an experience almost everyone has had, looking up at the infinite stars, feeling both small and yet strangely connected to something greater. But have you ever stopped to ask, who is the one experiencing this awe? Who is the one feeling, thinking, and questioning? Is it just the brain, neurons firing in a complex web of electrical impulses? Or is consciousness something more? Modern science tells us that our thoughts, emotions, and memories arise from brain activity. Chemical reactions, synapses, biological processes. Everything that makes you you is, according to this view, just a function of the physical body. And when the body dies, awareness ceases. No more thoughts, no more self, just darkness. But is that the whole truth? For over 2,500 years, Buddhism has been exploring the nature of consciousness in a way that challenges everything we think we know. According to Buddhist teachings, the mind is not merely a byproduct of the brain. It's something deeper, something that extends beyond physical matter. Buddhism teaches that consciousness is like a river, flowing from one moment to the next, from one life to another. It is not fixed. It does not belong to the body. Instead, it is shaped by karma, by causes and conditions, stretching far beyond a single lifetime. When the body ceases, the mind does not simply vanish. It continues, carrying the imprints of past actions, seeking a new form. So what does this mean for us? Here and now, it means that consciousness is more than just a fleeting accident of biology. It means that who we are is not confined to the brain. It means that every thought, every intention, every action has an impact, echoing beyond this lifetime. And if that's true, then what we do, how we live, how we treat others, these things matter far beyond what we can see. So I invite you to pause for a moment. Breathe. Feel the presence of your own awareness. Who is experiencing this moment? Who is hearing these words? Could it be that the mind is something vast, something limitless? In today's episode of our Buddhism podcast, we're diving deep into this mystery. We'll explore ancient Buddhist teachings on the mind, the latest scientific discoveries, and stories of those who have glimpsed something beyond the material world. Because if consciousness is not bound by the body, then neither is our true self. Stay with us. What you're about to hear might just change the way you see yourself, and reality forever. We go through life believing in a fixed, unchanging self, a core identity that stays the same from childhood to adulthood, through joy and sorrow. Through all the ups and downs of life, we say, "This is who I am." But have you ever stopped to ask, who am I really? Buddhism offers a perspective that turns this assumption upside down. It teaches that there is no single unchanging self at all. Instead, what we call I is just a temporary collection of constantly shifting elements known as the Five Aggregates. The first is form, rupa. This is your physical body, the flesh and bones, the brain and nervous system, everything you can touch and see. But does this define who you are? If your body changes, are you no longer you? Then there is feeling, vedana, the sensations you experience, pleasure, pain, neutrality. One moment, you feel joy, the next, sadness. These emotions come and go, never staying the same. So how can they be you? Next is perception, sana. This is how we interpret the world, the labels we assign to things. We see a flower and call it beautiful. We hear a sound and decide it's pleasant or annoying. But perceptions change. The song you once loved might now bring sadness. The food you once hated, you might now enjoy. If perception shifts, then how can it define you? Then we have mental formations, sankhara. These are your thoughts, desires, habits, and intentions. They shape the way you react to life. But thoughts rise and fall, desires change, habits break, and intentions shift. If they are always changing, can they be who you truly are? And finally, consciousness, vijnana. This is awareness itself, the ability to experience and recognize the world. But consciousness is not a fixed thing. It flickers in and out of focus, shaped by the other aggregates. It is influenced by emotions, thoughts, and sensations. If even awareness itself is not stable, then where is the unchanging you? Imagine a chariot. We call it a chariot, but if you take it apart, removing the wheels, the axles, the frame, there is no longer a chariot, only separate pieces. The name chariot is just something we assign to a collection of parts. In the same way, the self is just a name we give to the five aggregates working together. When you examine them one by one, there is no core, no single, unchanging essence that you can point to and say, "This is me." This realization is not just a philosophical concept. It changes everything. It means that suffering, attachment, and even the fear of death come from clinging to something that was never permanent to begin with. Think about it. If there is no fixed self, then who is it that suffers? Who is it that clings? And who is it that fears? Buddhism teaches that freedom comes when we stop grasping at an illusion. When we stop identifying with a false sense of self, we become free from suffering. Instead of reacting to life with fear and attachment, we begin to move through the world with wisdom and compassion, understanding that all things, our thoughts, our emotions, our very identity, are like flowing water, always changing, never still. So take a moment, breathe. Observe your thoughts, your sensations, your awareness. Ask yourself, where is the permanent I? If you look deeply, you may find that there is no single self to hold on to, and in that realization, there is peace. In today's episode of our Buddhism podcast, we are exploring the profound truth of the five aggregates. What does it mean to live without clinging to an illusion of self? And how does this understanding lead to true freedom? Stay with us. What you're about to hear might just shift the way you see yourself and reality forever. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything in this universe arises due to causes and conditions, interconnected in ways far beyond what we can immediately see. This is the essence of dependent origination, one of the most profound teachings in Buddhism. It tells us that nothing has an independent, fixed existence, not even our own consciousness. But what does this really mean? Imagine a candle flame. When you use it to light another candle, the fire continues, but it's not the exact same flame. The new flame looks similar, it behaves in the same way, but it is a fresh manifestation, dependent on fuel, oxygen, and the act of lighting. Consciousness works in a similar way. It is not a static thing, not a single, unchanging entity that exists on its own. Instead, it is a process, fluid, dynamic, shaped by our past experiences, thoughts, emotions, and karma. Every moment of awareness arises due to conditions, and when those conditions shift, so too does consciousness. We often assume that our mind is like a container, holding memories, thoughts, and a fixed sense of self. But what if the mind is more like a flowing river? The water you touch now is not the same water from a moment ago, yet the river appears continuous. Consciousness is the same, constantly arising and passing, moment to moment, never staying the same, yet appearing as a steady stream. This insight completely transforms how we view life and death. If consciousness is dependent on conditions, then what happens when those conditions change? When the body weakens, when the brain ceases its function, does awareness simply vanish? Or does it continue, transformed by new conditions, just like the candle's flame? Buddhism teaches that consciousness does not simply disappear. Just as a seed, given the right conditions, will sprout into a tree, the stream of consciousness continues, shaped by the karma we have created. Our thoughts, words, and actions are not lost. They leave imprints, guiding the mind into its next existence. This understanding is not just theoretical, it has profound implications for how we live. If consciousness is not a fixed self, but a flow influenced by causes and conditions, then what we do in each moment matters. The way we think, the way we treat others, the way we cultivate wisdom and compassion, these are not just personal choices. They shape the very nature of our mind, now and in the future. So take a moment to reflect. What thoughts are shaping your consciousness right now? What habits are influencing the flow of your awareness? If nothing exists independently, then what kind of conditions are you creating for your future? In today's episode of our Buddhism podcast, we are diving deep into the mystery of dependent origination and the nature of consciousness. If everything arises due to conditions, then what is truly you? And what happens when those conditions change? Stay with us. What you're about to hear may shift the way you see life, death, and the very nature of reality itself. Rebirth is one of the most widely misunderstood ideas in Buddhism. Many people assume it means a soul moves from one body to another, like a traveler changing clothes. But Buddhism does not teach the existence of a permanent, unchanging soul. Instead, rebirth is a process, like a wave moving through the ocean. Think about a wave. It rises, it falls, it changes shape with each passing moment. No single part of the wave remains the same, yet the motion continues. This is what rebirth truly is, not a fixed entity transferring from one life to the next, but a stream of consciousness flowing forward, shaped by the conditions that came before. Your consciousness, too, is like this wave. It is never the same from one moment to the next. Your thoughts shift. Your emotions rise and fall. The person you were 10 years ago is not the person you are today. And yet, there is a continuity, a pattern of cause and effect guiding your existence. This is where karma comes in. Karma is not about punishment or reward. It is not a cosmic system of judgment. It is simply the natural law of cause and effect. Every action, every intention, every thought you cultivate creates an imprint in the flow of consciousness. These imprints shape the momentum of the wave, influencing what comes next, not just in this life, but beyond. Imagine dropping a pebble into a still lake. The ripples spread outward, affecting the water in ways you may not even see. Our actions work the same way. A kind word, a moment of anger, a compassionate thought, all of these send out ripples, shaping the direction of the mind's journey. So if rebirth is not about a soul traveling from body to body, what is it that continues? It is the momentum of consciousness itself, the habits, tendencies, and karmic imprints we have accumulated over lifetimes. Just as a flame from one candle can light another, consciousness carries forward, shaped by the energy of past actions. The new flame is not the same as the old one, yet the fire continues. This understanding of rebirth has profound implications. It means that every moment matters. The way we think, the way we speak, the way we treat others, these are not just passing events. They are the currents that shape the river of our existence. And if nothing is fixed, if everything is in motion, then we are not trapped by our past. We can change the momentum. We can redirect the wave. This is why Buddhism emphasizes mindfulness, ethical living, and wisdom, not as rigid rules, but as a way to consciously shape the flow of life itself. Take a moment to reflect. If your mind is like a wave, what kind of movement are you creating? If karma is the current shaping your journey, what direction is it taking you? In today's episode of our Buddhism podcast, we are exploring the true meaning of rebirth. What happens when this life ends? What is it that continues? And how can we use this understanding to live with greater awareness, purpose, and peace? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see yourself and the endless journey of life itself. The Buddha once spoke of something extraordinary, the luminous mind, a state of pure awareness, untouched by greed, anger, or delusion, a radiant, boundless clarity that exists beneath all the noise of our thoughts. But what does that mean for us? Is consciousness merely a byproduct of the brain, destined to vanish at death, or is there something more? Throughout history, advanced Buddhist meditators have described profound experiences, states of awareness so vast and luminous that they seem to transcend the physical body. Some report perceiving reality with an unimaginable depth, as if stepping beyond the limits of ordinary perception. Others speak of visions, an all-encompassing clarity that dissolves the illusion of separateness. If the brain were the sole source of consciousness, then by all logic, awareness should cease when the brain dies. Yet these experiences challenge that assumption. Could it be that consciousness is not confined to the brain, but something far greater, something fundamental, infinite? Neuroscience has made incredible progress in understanding the brain, but it still cannot fully explain these states of expanded awareness. Material science tells us that consciousness arises from neural activity. But what if that's only part of the picture? What if consciousness is not something the brain produces, but rather something the brain filters? A vast ocean of awareness that we are only glimpsing through the narrow lens of our physical senses. Buddhism teaches that the mind is not just a product of the body, but a continuum, something that flows beyond birth and death. The practice of deep meditation is said to peel away the layers of illusion, revealing the mind's true nature, luminous, boundless, and free. So, what happens when we die? Does our awareness simply fade into nothingness, or does it expand into something beyond our understanding? The truth is, we don't yet know. But the experiences of countless meditators, near-death experiences, and even emerging scientific studies on consciousness hint at a reality far more profound than we've ever imagined. Perhaps the luminous mind isn't just a poetic metaphor. Perhaps it's a doorway to understanding who we truly are. If you've ever had a moment of deep clarity, a time when your mind felt completely still, yet more awake than ever, you've touched something ancient, something real. What if that stillness is the true nature of consciousness? Buddhism invites us to explore this mystery, not through blind belief, but through direct experience. Meditation, mindfulness, self-inquiry, these are tools not just for calming the mind, but for uncovering something extraordinary, the awareness that has always been there, waiting beneath the surface. So what do you think? Is consciousness simply a fleeting product of the brain? Or is there something deeper, something that continues beyond the limits of time and space? Let's keep exploring. Near-death experiences. For those who've had them, they are undeniable. For those who haven't, they remain a mystery. Imagine this. Your heart stops. Your brain flatlines. By all medical definitions, you are gone. And yet, something happens. Instead of fading into oblivion, you feel a sense of detachment, a lightness, as if you're rising above your body. You see doctors working frantically below, hear conversations that should be impossible to hear. Some describe moving through a tunnel, greeted by a radiant light. Others encounter loved ones who have long since passed, speaking words of comfort, urging them to return or to move forward. When these people are revived, they come back forever changed. The experience feels more real than life itself. They speak of an overwhelming sense of peace, a knowing that there is something beyond death. But how is that possible? If consciousness is merely a product of the brain, shouldn't it disappear when the brain shuts down? Science has tried to explain these accounts. Some theories suggest they are hallucinations caused by oxygen deprivation. Others point to biochemical processes firing in a dying brain. But these explanations fail to answer some key questions. How do so many people describe similar experiences, regardless of culture or belief? How do they recall verifiable details from moments when they had no brain activity at all? From a Buddhist perspective, near-death experiences may be something far more profound. They could be glimpses into the Bardo, the transitional state between death and rebirth. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this realm in stunning detail. It is said that after death, The mind, freed from the body, moves through different phases of clarity and confusion, encountering visions shaped by past karma and attachments. For centuries, Buddhist monks have explored the nature of consciousness through deep meditation, seeking direct experience beyond the limits of the physical self. In the most advanced states, meditators describe a vast awareness where time and space dissolve, where the illusion of individuality fades, revealing something infinite, luminous. They speak of a consciousness that is not bound to the brain, but something deeper, something that continues. Could it be that near-death experiences and these deep meditative states are connected, that they are both glimpses of the same reality? Modern neuroscience is still searching for answers, but Buddhism has long taught that the mind is not limited to the body, that what we call self is only a temporary illusion, and that death is not an end, but a transition, one that we will all experience sooner or later. So what do we make of this? Are NDEs just strange hallucinations of a dying brain, or are they windows into a truth we have yet to fully understand? If you've ever wondered about what happens after death, if you've ever questioned whether consciousness is more than just neurons firing in the brain, maybe you're already beginning to remember something ancient, something that has been waiting beneath the surface of your awareness all along. Perhaps the answers are not out there, but within. Let's keep exploring. Who are you really? A name, a body, a collection of memories, beliefs, and desires. But if you strip all of that away, what remains? Buddhism teaches a profound truth. There is no fixed, unchanging self. This is the realization of Anatta, the absence of a permanent identity. And yet, we cling so tightly to the idea of me. We build our lives around it. We defend it. We suffer for it. Why? Because the ego, the sense of a solid self, gives us a feeling of control. It tells us we are separate, unique, independent. But this illusion comes with a cost. It makes us fear death, because we believe something permanent will be lost. It makes us crave validation, because we think our worth depends on how others see us. It makes us grasp for security, status, and attachment, chasing things that are always changing, always slipping through our fingers. But what if we saw through this illusion? Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean, watching the waves rise and fall. Each wave has a shape, a movement, a moment of existence, but none of them exists separately from the ocean itself. They are just temporary expressions of something much greater. This is us. We are not fixed, separate beings. We are part of a vast, interconnected flow of existence. The body changes, the mind changes, thoughts, emotions, and identities come and go like passing clouds. The more we try to cling to them, the more we suffer. But when we let go, when we stop grasping for a self that isn't truly there, something extraordinary happens. We find freedom. Without the illusion of self, there is no need to defend, no need to compare, no need to prove anything. We begin to move through life with more ease, more acceptance. When challenges arise, they are no longer personal failures. They are just part of the unfolding of life. This realization also transforms how we see others. If there is no fixed self, then there is no real separation between me and you. Just as we suffer, others suffer too. Just as we long for happiness, so does every living being. When we recognize this, compassion arises naturally. We stop seeing people as opponents, competitors, or strangers. We start seeing them as reflections of the same vast, interconnected whole. This is why the Buddha taught Anatta not as a cold, abstract idea, but as a path to deep peace and liberation. So ask yourself, what are you holding on to? What identity, what belief about yourself is causing you suffering? And what would happen if you simply let it go? Not as an idea, not as something to believe, but as something to experience, fully, deeply, right now. Because when we stop clinging to the illusion of self, we don't lose anything real. We only lose the suffering that comes with holding on. And in its place, we find something far greater. Let's keep exploring. Buddhism isn't just about understanding deep truths. It's about transformation. It's not enough to simply ask philosophical questions or debate ideas. The real purpose of this path is to cultivate an awakened mind, a mind that sees reality clearly and lives in harmony with it. But how do we do that? The Buddha didn't teach Buddhism as a belief system. He offered it as a path, a way to free ourselves from suffering and live with greater peace, wisdom, and compassion. And that path begins with practice. Mindfulness meditation teaches us to be present, to witness our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without getting caught in them. It trains the mind to let go of endless reactivity and return to the simplicity of the present moment. Loving kindness practice opens the heart, dissolving the barriers we build between ourselves and others. It reminds us that at the core, all beings long for happiness, all beings wish to be free from suffering, and ethical living, choosing kindness, honesty, and non-harming, keeps us aligned with truth. It's not about rigid morality. It's about cultivating a way of life that supports inner peace rather than regret, clarity rather than confusion. When we engage in these practices, something shifts. We begin to break free from the patterns of craving and aversion that have controlled us for so long. We start to experience moments of deep presence, moments where the mind is still, open, awake. And in those moments, something profound becomes clear. We are not who we think we are. Consciousness is not just a mechanical process tied to a brain. Have you ever had an experience that felt timeless? A moment of pure awareness, where there was no sense of past or future, no sense of me and you, only presence. Buddhist teachings suggest that these glimpses point to a deeper reality, that consciousness is not something the brain produces, but something that flows through all things, that our sense of separation is an illusion, one that can dissolve when we truly see. But this path isn't about blind faith. It's not about accepting anything just because a teacher or a text says so. It's an invitation to explore your own mind, to question your assumptions, and to seek truth through direct experience. So, what do you think? Is consciousness just a function of the brain? Or could there be something more, something vast, luminous, and beyond physical form? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Let's continue this journey together. And if this episode resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into the mysteries of Buddhism and the nature of the mind. See you in the next episode.